Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my bog forest, giving it a light prune, and I'm going to be repotting this Lantana into bonsai soil and a new pot. My bog forest is springing to life. All the larches are greening up really nicely, and some of them, like this one back here, need to be pruned. Spring is such a wonderful time of the year for bonsai. You can see changes daily on the trees as they leaf out and grow. It's an amazing time of the year. It's so nice to see this forest greening up after the long winter. Because I'm trying to keep the trees in this forest small and a slim conical shape, I've really got to keep up with the pruning of the forest. So today I'll be doing a little bit of work on the trees. I'm going to start the pruning back here with this larch tree. The lower branches aren't all that vigorous, and as you go up the tree, it gets more and more vigorous and the shoots get longer and longer. I want to keep a tight conical form to this tree, so it's time this tree got pruned back. It's also starting to shade out some of the trees beside it. Alright, here I go with the pruning. I'm going to start with the shoot out front. I can see a bud already formed there, so I'll prune just in front of that. Like that, taking that much off. There's a shoot to the side here. I can just prune it off anywhere, shortening it up. The apex, it's not too bad. I could grow this tree a little taller. That's my intention, is to keep the slim conical form to it, but maybe grow the trees a little taller. I think there's room for that, certainly. I'll just pinch off the tip of it, or prune off the tip, keeping, quite a bit of that vertical growth. And I'm just looking for other branches here that are getting a little long. I think the rest are okay. As I'm pruning these trees, I'm always looking for back buds. So if I can shorten a branch or get a branch to go a better direction, I will. Here's one here I can shorten. I'm also going to prune up some of the larch in the surrounding area here, just shortening some of the new shoots. They're getting a bit long. This shoot's getting a little long here. Prune that back. This one can be pruned back a bit. Just pinching the tips off some of these more vigorous branches. Some of the lower ones are doing really well. I could even pinch that one. It's getting a little long. Every time you prune one of these larch branches, it'll generally divide from 1 into 2, so you get more finer branching on the trees. Here's a long shoot back here that needs pruning. Kind of giving a bit of space between the trees here. This one is starting to grow into the one beside it, so I've got to prune these shoots off shorter. And it'll always be a challenge keeping these trees to size. But it'll also make a very charming forest with these little tiny larches. Just making sure I have space between all these trees, that I'm not getting too cluttered up. If you don't do any pruning on these trees, they'll quickly grow into very large trees. They're very vigorous, especially in this pot, which is quite large for the trees. They'll get a good root system and really take off. So you have to do lots of pruning. So we have a bit of a storm coming in today. The temperature is supposed to drop quite quickly, and it's supposed to snow, and there's supposed to be whiteouts. So we'll see. It is getting very windy out. It's certainly a blustery day today. So this tree's taking quite a bit of pruning too. Now these trees you could, just kind of shear them to a conical shape. I could use the blue scissors. I'm going to prune this apex back here. Yeah, I could just kind of shear it to a conical shape, and that would work quite well. Just kind of profile pruning them, you get quite a good looking tree, I think. but I'm doing it a little more accurately here. I'm trying to use a bit of directional pruning if I can. This larch out front here, you can see there's a few places where it's getting a little cluttered. I've got a bud growing back in towards the tree here. I can remove that. Take that out. There's another bud that's kind of pointing up here. I've got a better shoot coming out on an angle, so I can prune the tip off. There's always something you can do to these trees to kind of improve them. By looking at all the buds, you can kind of thin it. You can see it's getting very heavy up in the apex here. So I'll need to do a bit of thinning there. I'll try and take this shoot out like that. It's just getting too cluttered up there in the apex. Just clean this cut up here. I don't need this shoot here. Take that back. There's a bud on the inside here I can take out. Actually, there's a couple there. I could take out this one too. Prune the tip off here. Just little improvements. Here's a branch here shooting up. I've got an outward facing bud here, so I can remove the upper one and the one on the inside. So it fans out a little better. There's one facing up here I can remove. This branch here I could shorten. You can see I've got growth out here at the tip. I've got some branches in closer, some buds, so I could shorten it, and I will. I'm going to shorten it, keeping this one back here, pruning the tip off like that. Taking advantage of that back budding. Now there's something going on here. It's very crowded. I think I've got a bud growing up here I can remove. Or should it? No, I should remove the downward one. These branches should be pointing upward slightly. And I think this one too, I can remove this downward bud here. It's just too cluttered. And there's one back here. Taking that out. That cleans that up a little better. I could even take this one out. There. Yeah, that's much better. Most of the spruce back here are still budding out. You can see the tallest tree, the buds are actually starting. You can see the needles, and the one back here is just full of new green growth. I'll show you a close-up of that one. Here is all that new growth on here, and you can see how jam-packed it is with new buds. It's amazing. So I can do a little bit of thinning here also. It's just getting very, very crowded. There. Yeah, just kind of thinning out some of those buds. And as it gains vigor, I'll be doing a bit more thinning. As they start extending, I can kind of see my shoots a little more clearly and do a bit more thinning. I'm going to go through the rest of the trees here, kind of studying them and then pruning away any unnecessary buds, making branches more compact, just little things to improve the trees. And my takeaway from this whole process today is that if you want to keep your trees small, you've got to prune them frequently and carefully. You can't just let them grow for a couple of months and then come back in and prune them because they'll have gotten too thick, too vigorous. So you've really got to control that new growth, keep it under control, keep your trees in a less vigorous state so they grow evenly and slowly. And you'll have good success with miniature forests. I finished pruning up the trees in the forest, just some light pruning today. Next, I'm going to deal with the moss and the weeds. Check out the wind outside. It's really blowing and it's starting to snow. Yeah, quite a blustery day out here. Ooh, I'll close the door, keep the heat in the greenhouse. I've got my curved scissors and my tweezers, so I'm going to go in, clean up the forest. So I need to do a bit of pruning. The moss, I like to keep it longer in the front of the planting, and as I go back deeper and deeper, I prune it finer and finer, and that gives a kind of a forest perspective. So you have the longer, grasses and plants in the front. As you go to the back, it gets finer and finer, and it looks more like it's in the distance. So that's what I'm doing, just kind of pruning up the moss. If you don't prune the moss in these forests, it gets really, really thick, and it starts to just overtake your entire planting. It doesn't look miniature anymore. It just looks like a big, undercover of moss, thick moss, and it grows up around the trunks of the trees, and it can really take over. So here again, I'll prune back the moss, leaving it longer out front. And any weeds I find, I'll pick out. I don't want weeds in here. They can quickly take over your forest. And once the weeds get to a certain level, it's almost impossible to clean them out. It just gets overwhelming. So it's best, like I'm doing today, is to pick out the little weeds before they get too thick and established. I'm just stopping some of this moss from growing up the trunks of the trees. Cleaning it back a bit. Pruning in the forest here. It's starting to rain or snow outside. I guess it's snow. And you don't want your moss to look like a lawn. You want it to be kind of in clumps. So whenever I get a patch out front like this, I kind of clean it out. So here's that patch, and you can see it's kind of boring. It all looks the same. So first of all, I'm going to clean it back from the tree, the base of this tree, like that. And then I'm going to pick out some of the moss, just clumps of it, just to break it up so it's not an even look to it. It doesn't look like a lawn. It looks more like, a real forest that has clumps of bushes growing and ground cover. And then I'll come in with the scissors and kind of prune some a little shorter, leave some a little longer. Wow, let me show you outside now. Let me just open the door here. Snow's really coming down now. Look at that. Oh my goodness. It's so nice having this greenhouse, so I'm able to work away in the worst of conditions. So I'm just working away at this patch of moss out front, breaking it up. And you can always pull out, big clumps of moss and replace it with sand, just to break up the green, so it's not all just moss. It's kind of maybe a little more realistic for a forest. So that looks better. If you see that, it kind of looks more broken up and a little more natural. I like that. At the edge of the planting, I have some liverwort forming here, so I'm pulling that out. getting rid of it before it spreads and becomes a real problem. Check out the big fluffy flakes of snow now. Wow. Yeah, it's still winter here. I finished cleaning up my bog forest, at least for today. I'll be back at it probably once a week, just kind of keeping tabs on it, keeping it all trimmed up and looking good. I'll put the bog forest back under the bench and start work on the lantana. Here's a look at my lantana. It doesn't look like much. It's been chilling in the basement over the winter. Lantanas are supposed to have a cool rest period over the winter. They form their flower buds then for spring. So you can see on the top of the tree there is 2 flower buds. I did have a lantana bonsai many years ago. And I didn't realize they needed a cool rest period in the winter, and I think mine just kind of got weak and eventually died. So I'm going to try and grow this one. I think I got this for, well, these are 50 cents or $1 at one of the nursery centers. It might have even been free when they were clearing out their stock in fall. So I'm taking it from, it's probably a cutting that's rooted, taking it from this, and hopefully I'll develop it into a nice bonsai. Over here I have my bonsai workbench, my miniature one, and I found this cascade pot recently. It was outside under the snow, and I'm thinking my lantana would be nice in this pot, kind of developing it as a cascade. So let's try and do that. Here is a close-up look at the lantana. So it's not much to look at. It's basically a Y-shaped stick in a pot. So hopefully I can transform this into a beautiful cascade bonsai in the years ahead. So here is what this plant is. It is a Lantana Bandito Orange Sunrise. So it looks like it has yellow and orange flowers on it. It should be quite exciting to see it flower someday. Alright, I'm going to get the plant out of the pot, loosen it up a bit, and then pull it out. Oh, lots of roots, look at that. Nice. Alright, let me start combing out the soil here. So if this is a cutting, I don't know how far down in the soil the base of the cutting will be. Okay, so what I'm seeing so far is a good set of roots, and I don't think the cutting goes down very far. I think it's, this is all roots down below. Yeah, so probably, a lot of that can get pruned away. I think I'm ready to start washing the root system. I've got to get some of the soil out of the upper part here. So let's get it into a bucket of water now. All right, into the bucket of water goes the lantana. And I'll get the rest of the soil out. So these lantanas, they can get very thick woody trunks on them. John Naka had a really good one. I've seen it in pictures. Hong in our KW club has a really nice one that used to belong to Eldon, so they live long term, that's for sure. They can live a long time. And beautiful flowers. They're just one of the nicest flowering plants you'll see. Multicolored flowers and just spectacular. Okay, so I've got the root system all cleaned up. Let's begin the root pruning. Before I begin the root pruning, I need to set up the tree, how I'm going to have it in the pot. So if I have it like this, it's an upright tree. I want it to be a cascade. So I need one of the branches to be the cascade part, the other part to be the apex, and then the root system going down into the pot. So you can see it's not set up very well as a cascade at the moment. I do have a branch going down here, so I could prune it off here, develop this branch down as a cascade, shorten my apex maybe to form a top there. Yeah, I think that's about the only approach. I think this is the stronger one for the cascade, like this. So I will need to do some root pruning. I'm too deep for the pot here. So let me start that. So if I'm having, it on the angle like this, I'm going to have to prune off the roots on the top surface here. Not all of them, but just some. And I need to reduce the length of these long roots. They're too long. That's getting it a little better. I can reduce it a little more. It's still a little too much roots. These ones clip back, sort of like that. I think that's getting closer to fitting in the pot. I'll have to develop this branch as the cascade, so I'll prune my flowers off. So here they go. I'll leave a bit of a stub here, like that. That could be planted as a cutting, and I'm sure it would root. I'm going to prune out this stub up the middle here, like that. And then I need to reduce this, so I'm going to cut it back to here. Even that's a little long, but I'm hoping something sprouts out and I can maybe shorten it more in the future. Now, as far as the roots, I think I can work with that. I'm just going to untangle some of these, or prune the tangled ones back. So here's one that kind of goes in a funny direction. Get rid of that. This one too. Get rid of all the curly roots. Get rid of that one. Trim that one back. Okay, I think that'll work. I think there's plenty of roots on the tree to support the growth this year. All right, I'll get a drainage screen in the bottom of the pot, put some soil in and plant the tree. All right, in goes my drainage screen. That's in the bottom of the pot now. So now I can fill it with soil to maybe about halfway, put the tree in, and then fill it the rest of the way. Getting some soil in here now. Okay, so that's filled about halfway. So next I'll get the tree planted. Now, is there a front to this pot? I doubt it. All sides look the same. This is a nice little pot. It's a Japanese pot. Okay, in goes the tree. So I've left a fair amount of roots on here. So I haven't got much of a cascade going here. I think I need to tilt it more like that. Yeah. Okay. So somehow I have to add soil in here. Guess I'll just kind of fill it one piece at a time. I can put some back here. That's working okay. So I'll leave this tree out in the greenhouse now, and it should wake up with the warmer temperatures and sunshine. Well, if we get warmer temperatures. It's pretty cool out today. Now, how is it looking? Well, it's not a very good cascade, is it? Looks more like a leaning tree or a slanting tree, but hopefully, you know, I'll try and grow this branch strong, vigorous, and it'll kind of flow better as the trunk thickens up. I think it will. I think it'll look good in the future. Okay, I think I'm going to fill, you can see I've got it pretty well filled with soil, and it's all around the roots. I'm going to fill it up the rest of the way with sand. All right, I've got my sand as a top dressing, so I'll add that in. Okay, maybe just a bit more, and then I'm ready to water. All right, here I go. Let that soak in. These tall pots drain really, really well. So I'll be able to water this plant lots over the summer. You can't overwater trees in these tall pots. They just have such good drainage. A tall column of water. Okay, that will do. That is it. I'll put the tag back in the pot just so I don't forget what it is. The Lantana is now part of my miniature bonsai bench, so hopefully it'll do well in the future. Before we go today, I want to show you an accent planting that's looking really good and very spring-like. It may be winter outside, but my accent plant tells me it's spring. Here's a look at my accent plant in flower. It's in a pot made by Isabella, and I think it matches the planting really, really nicely. It almost reminds me of a pond, the color of it. There's a close-up of one of the flowers. I'm not sure what they are, but they sure are beautiful, and this planting conveys spring to me so much that I think it's just beautiful to look at. One of my goals for the last few years is to start more accent plants. So when you go to a show, if you've got a nice tree to show, you have a suitable accent plant to go with it. That's something I'm sadly lacking in. It may be winter outside, but here in the greenhouse, it's clearly spring. That is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.